Welcome to Legacy Therapy, the podcast that will teach you, in bite-sized chunks, how to leave a stress-free legacy so loved ones can focus on people, not paperwork, when you become ill or pass away. Here is your host and financial advocate, Stacey Golden-Lisnock.
Hello, and welcome to the 8th episode of Legacy Therapy, Planning Techniques for a Stress-Free Legacy. And today I'm excited to bring to you Sherri Bell. And Sherri and I have had a couple of different conversations, and she's quite interesting. So I'm looking forward to this today. And so I am going to let Sherri give you a little bit of her background. That's kind of breaking tradition of how I normally start the show. But Sherri, why don't you go ahead and just sort of lay the groundwork of kind of where you've been, where you're coming from, and what lens you're looking through, and what you're offering your clients, and what you can offer to our listening audience. Take it away.
Thank you for having me. I have a vast background. I was married to a pro soccer player. So my first time out of America, I got to travel around the world, and that really opened my eyes to other people and other cultures. And under the context of what we're talking about now, it really gives one perspective on how they see the world, and if they live in America or if they live in other cultures that deal with end of life. So I would say that opened my mind and my experience to know how other people live and what they hold dear and how they live their life with their families. So I've also been a serial entrepreneur because I've traveled a lot. So with the people at the heart of the matter for everything I do, that's why my company's I Care Concierge, is because number one, I care. And I know a lot of people out there, business is number one and caring might be down on their list of priorities. So I am an advocate for people and patients, being a caregiver myself. I've also worked with a family practitioner who had a practice for 40 years here in Orange, California, Dr. Susan Debin. And so I got to see from inside a medical office and also from an exterior outside of a medical office. I had my mother as a patient. So I'm familiar with kind of how we need to, be an advocate for our families on all levels in multiple realms. So that's kind of at the heart of the matter here, right? Because what I loved about Stacey is that her and I resonated, because I'm like, somebody's got to be talking about this, right? Because the most precious gift you can give your family is the gift of being prepared, i.e. Stacey and me. So that's my background. I worked with seniors and created a concierge program with Dr. Susan Debin. And so I kind of understand from the inside of individuals and what they're going through. A lot of people are reinventing themselves, whether they had cancer, whether a spouse passed away, whether they just got divorced. But a lot of people, no matter what age, you're creating a new path in life, and to be healthy and vibrant and create an environment where you're high performing and you have peace of mind is, I feel like, at the forefront of all of us. Do you agree?
I do. I agree with everything you're saying. It's wonderful, because we all get a chance at some point to look and see, what is it we're really here for? What is it we can do from this point forward? And it looks like you're there to really kind of guide and assist on some level.
Yeah. And so, I am an advocate as a caregiver. I was a caregiver. I had my life hijacked. So maybe, a lot of listeners right now, they might be dealing with, juggling a lot of situations in their life. But I got married. I lived in Hawaii, and I had just gotten married. And was creating a beautiful new life with our own company. And my dad called and said, Sherri, your sister's been given 2 months to live. So she was 39 at the time. She's been battling cancer for 3 years, was in remission, but now it came back. And so I said, well, I'm there for you, Dad. So so that's what we do as caregivers. We're empaths and we care. And so we show up for people who need caregiving. We find ourselves in that situation. So if you're a listener out there, just know that some of us have the wheelhouse of compassion. Absolutely. And we extend our hands and our hearts. And sometimes, it's important to know how to deal with it all. So that's my mission, is to help people on the other side be a cheerleader of pre-planning. So I had a mother and a sister. So I've dealt with mental health issues. But long story short, when you're in that situation and you're dealing, there's no handbook for caregiving. I even Googled, I'm like, is there any support groups for caregiving? I didn't find any, and this was 10 years ago. So now there's more, I'm sure. But you're basically navigating a path that's unknown, and it's a destructive path. There's rubble, there's hurdles, there's so much to deal with that you don't even know. There's paperwork, there's medical, there's so much. So
but you get thrown into something you're not trained to do generally, right? You're a nurse and you're an administrator, and you have to be an advocate on the medical side of things, and you have so many responsibilities that you take on, and they're depending on you totally because they no longer can really make those decisions in a lot of cases. So you how long were you a caregiver?
Well, so I sold 2 homes. I, basically moved 2 people. I had to commit my mother in the middle of all that. And my mom was, a stay-at-home mom. She was into holistic healing in the 80s. She really laid the foundation of, who her kids were in the health world, holistic health world. So, mental health can come in and destroy family. But the 2 common denominators here that we want to talk about are denial. And, that's okay because people are fighting for their lives when they have cancer. So they don't really even think about if I do go, if an unforeseen event happens and I do happen to leave, they don't think about that because they're giving every last bit to fighting for their life. Now, on the other hand, my mom, God bless both their souls, right? My mom said, she goes, it's not my time to go. Great Aunt Betty lived until she was 99, right? So we all have these kind of preconceived stories and beliefs in our mind. And so it kind of creates this obstacle in front of us, when in reality is that we all have a finite time on this planet, right? We are mortal. And so a lot of people, we don't really think about that. So I think it's great that you're bringing up the topic about pre-planning. So 360 on the other end, I have been a pre-planning advisor for a cremation company. And so I have been in hundreds of people's homes, and I've gotten an inside view of, what they're going through, what they're experiencing, why they're looking at cremation, why their spouse isn't going to talk about it, why their daughter's not going to talk about it. Just, really people are curious and they're inquisitive about, preparing for end of life affairs. But I will say that most people do not, I'd say there's 3 categories. There's those that plan, that have their living will, their trust, and some things in place. And then you've got the people who are kind of curious, right, and have questions. And then you've got the procrastinators who know that they need to do this, but they're not ready to face their mortality because they're 86 and they have a long time to go, right? And then you've got the people that don't even think about it.
Right.
And then something happens in their life. So I've seen a lot of people, and I understand 360 on the other side of how people can pre-plan down to the last minute where there is no burden. So, people who are left behind are burdened. And another financial advisor said, I've seen so many people unprepared, and it really creates a huge stress in their life. And that's on the front of your podcast, which I think is huge because stress is the cause of 99% of diseases. So when we all have stress, we have layers of stress. So by pre-planning, it can take the stress off of people that you leave behind, whether it's your girlfriend, your domestic partner, your spouse of 45 years, your daughter who is a single mom who has her own life. It really helps. It takes the responsibility and puts it on your shoulders. So whoever's listening, really that's kind of where you're at, is that you want to say, I'm going to take responsibility to learn as much as I can and get everything buttoned up so that it's one call does it all. When someone is left behind, right? They deal with everything, all the paperwork's handled because they're going to get educated and know what paperwork to do. I talked with a gentleman a couple weeks ago, and now because of COVID, most of our consultations are done on the phone, and you get to really know people, right? Because they want to talk to someone about this conversation. And that's how I really open it up. I say, I'm getting ready to have a conversation that most people don't talk to you about, that most people don't have. And it kind of breaks the ice, and they laugh. And so I get to know a lot. But this gentleman, he's like, well, honey, I'm in a wheelchair and I can't get to my room upstairs because that's where all the paperwork is. So, for those of you that do have aging parents, we are a part of the sandwich generation, right? We are in the middle. We have our children that we care for, and we have our parents, and so we are in the sandwich. And so this really is perfect for those of us that are in that situation, is to really be proactive, get the paperwork done. I've looked at Stacey's modules, and I'm super impressed. There's things on there that I've talked to financial advisors, I've worked with fiduciaries, life insurance brokers, etc. And I will tell you that from looking at Stacey's modules, there's things on there that no one talks about that I think people want to know. Can I mention one of them, Stacey?
Sure, go ahead.
The last one, the gun trust. Yeah, I show that to people, and they're like, wow, I really want to know about that. They don't know about that.
Yeah. And I found out about that quite by accident as well, because it's a very niche market. If you're a gun owner, you may or may not know that you just can't just gift your guns and will your guns away, because there are laws surrounding gun ownership. And you could actually create a felon. You can make one of your relatives a felon if they take the wrong type of firearm into the wrong state, over state lines or whatever. But yeah, we're in the process of creating that module. But I'm thinking that that's going to enlighten a lot of people into really understanding that you can't just think they take care of themselves, right?
Exactly. And the bottom line is that I think most people want to leave their family with the most money possible and the least burden with things to have to do, because they want time to celebrate their life, to grieve and heal. And families' lives are disrupted because of death, because decisions haven't been made. So you have siblings that fight, that don't talk to each other for the rest of their life. So I feel the more people pre-plan, the more that they're going to leave a family that is functioning, that has time to celebrate and grieve and go on with their life and leave their legacy, because it is in essence their legacy they're leaving behind. So
I think you say it so eloquently. I know you've dealt with a lot of people, and a lot of it is in the approach, in are you willing to listen to this conversation? You can't really browbeat somebody into understanding that they have this power, that from the grave they can, in fact, I talk about that on my intro to my podcast. It says, dead people can wreak havoc on the living. And it's so true, because, from the grave, they're dictating a lot of things that are unbearable consequences to the people left here to have to endure. And and some of them are, as I would say, innocuous as having to deal with probate court and attorneys, where other ones are very damaging in that it severs relationships, like you mentioned, families that just never speak to one another again because of something somebody didn't prepare for, that was a looming eventuality. Every single one of us have this on our, you have a birthday and you have a death day. In fact, my mom's death day just passed September 4th, and I always remember it every year and have some flashbacks as to what we were going through at the time. We sat by her bedside for, like, I think it was 5 days. I can remember the couple phone calls that I got on my old cell phone. It was in 2002. So I had an old, like, flip phone, whatever. I can remember taking this phone call from a client and saying, I'm sorry, I can't, you get frozen in time on some issues, right? In some moments. And, if you're lucky enough to actually be by the bedside and actually have that time, it can be a very big celebration, because my mom was always, she would mention about somebody she knew who died alone. And when she told that story, she would well up, and she didn't want to die alone. And so we were able to fulfill that, and she definitely did not die alone. And that's the thing with this COVID now. There are so many people, and a lot of these nurses and mention that they are the last person that they see and talk to, and that they really try to make it rememberable and not just, leave them to die by themselves.
Right.
Let the family know that somebody was there with them.
Yeah, that I've seen that as a big concern. I noticed I like to kind of understand what's going on socially, and I noticed a lot of people that called in to request information about pre-need arrangements. A lot of them were alone. So they have no friends. They might have worked their whole life. They don't really have friends. They have no family. They never got married. They don't have kids. And also because of this pandemic, now they're in their home alone, and they're afraid. They don't know what to do. They don't know who's going to help them. Exactly. So there are a lot of people like that are isolated, that don't really know. They can go to eye care dash concierge under the compassion page, and we can, there's a few steps on there that they can look at and talk about and start a conversation. I think that's the most important, is to start a conversation with someone and at least get your feelings out, understand your options, and know how to button up your affairs with your pre-need arrangement, with the cremation, whether you do cremation or traditional burial, but to get all your last wishes in place. And a huge part of that is paperwork. Now, I've seen a family, I had a 42-year-old get a pre-need arrangement in place because her family, the uncle passed away. They paid an attorney a lot of money for a living trust, which just takes care of stuff, but they didn't have a password. So it was 6 months they were waiting on their family money that was coming to them, but it was all because of a password. So not every single person, knows every single step. And from what I've seen that you've put together, I feel like it's very thorough. I feel like so whether you're a parent or whether you're an adult kid, right? I call them adult kids, like me and you. Is that you want to spend a part of your time pre-planning and just have it as a little project that you're going to have on the side of your desk, and learn about all the different ways that you can save your family money and get everything in place, so at the time you can focus on celebrating life, someone's life, and having peace of mind. That's number one, is that you have peace of mind when you know everything's going to get taken care of. You are leaving a body behind. Okay, so people need to really think about that. What am I going to do? What is going to be done? I had a 50-year-old call me and say, I just got back from Vegas. We had a girls' weekend, and someone passed away unexpectedly. She said it was a nightmare. The family had to fly in. They had to deal with her body. They had to deal with the paperwork. It's a very legal thing to pass away. There's county lines, city lines, state lines, country lines, and it's all very, very paperwork driven and legal driven. And I feel like what you're offering will help someone have an easier time navigating that, as well as having a pre-need arrangement in place. So you
Yeah,
call.
I think a lot of times people get to the point, they'll do a fraction of what's necessary and call it a day. And they're not realizing, you mentioned the password issue. They're not realizing there's things that they're not even considering as a problem potentially because they haven't gone through it themselves. And this thing about pre-need and actually planning for your remains just feels so foreign to people that they never actually get to that part of the plan, right? So unless you get kind of corralled into it with like family members that kind of maybe one person sort of spearheads the idea, let's go and do this all of us so it's not so scary, right? Because I heard there's family plots and there's sometimes the grandparents will buy the whole plot for the whole family, and so then they think we got this taken care of, like the grandparents handled it for us, and that's all well and good, but do you really know what you have too? That's the thing. Because when you actually go down to the point where you need it, do you actually know what you have, or you just
Exactly.
like relying on like like family tales of yes, it exists.
They know what to do. Here's another one, and this is one of my myths of everything's already taken care of. Everything's taken care of, and I feel like, and then when you discover it's actually not, it's taken care of in the fact that we know that when someone dies, we'll go to the local funeral home, right? So there's a lot more that can be kind of uncovered and planned, right? So that no one has to be burdened. But really the first step is to admit that, okay, I am going to go at some point. I don't know where or when I'm going to go, but I am going to have everything in place because it's my responsibility. So some people, like you mentioned, they when they look at that, if they feel like they acknowledge that I need to get ready for this, I feel like they're acknowledging that they're going to die right then, and they're not. This is for people who pre-plan. And I've noticed a lot of teachers, principals, people who are organized, who probably plan for a vacation, are pre-planners, right? So they're curious about this, and they're going to be the ones pre-planning. So I think, more and more people have the opportunity to embrace that side of them that they might not have, embraced before, but, anchor down and do it now for your family, because we're all going to go at some point.
That's right. And as far as the pricing of it, so when you're faced with making those decisions on the dime and you have a body there that needs to be dealt with, you're looking at, well, like, what would you say percentage wise more that you're paying that's really, and you take advantage of? Because I just remember this one story, just real quick, where and I don't even know if it's a myth or a real story, but it's like this pillow. Which pillow would you like to buy for your mother in the casket? This one's $2,000, but it's the last pillow that you're ever going to buy for your dear mother that you love so much. And I think you should get this one because it's the best. It's a top of the line pillow. $2,000. Okay. I don't want to let mom down.
I know. So more and more people are waking up to the fact that they don't have to go and sit in a funeral home on that day. That is the worst day of their life and the most chaotic day of their life, and be asked questions like that, because that is when someone can get taken advantage of, because they're in that vulnerable position and they haven't talked about it. So they have this guilt of, I want to do what's best for my mom or my dad or my wife or my husband or my daughter or my son, unfortunately. But so I feel like, I had a in-person visit with a couple, and I talk about, what do you want done with your ashes? And people don't really ever talk about that, right? But it's kind of like an opportunity. More and more people, they're saving 50 to 75%, over traditional funeral costs by going with a kind of a modern version. We had a gentleman, and he said, "Oh, I go hiking." He goes, "I want to be spread in Yosemite." And so the wife called me 5 days later, after he went in for surgery and then he didn't recover, he passed away. And he said, Sherri, I just want to thank you so much. That was the biggest gift that we all got, is to know what he wanted done with his ashes. So now his family, his wife and her, their son, have a special kind of connection and a memory of what he wanted done with his ashes, and they will have that special celebration of life the way that he wanted to. So that's where a conversation can go.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, the whole thing starts with a conversation on all of these things, to do your healthcare directive, to do your living trust, to find the guardians for your children or your pets. You have to start the conversation. And sometimes it's just this odd conversation that people are like, are you weird or what? Like, they don't want to have, like, you might catch them at a time where they're just like not open. Right. So it's almost like you have to test the waters and see if it's okay to go there. And you can kind of start out slow, maybe kind of running it by some of your friends, before you run it by your family, and just say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think? And you just get more comfortable saying the words. It's interesting just how human beings are. You have to kind of get used to the idea before it becomes something that you're really going to embrace. Right. But you would think that as the human race, we would all understand that we, like you said, are not here forever. Everybody has a birthday and a death day. And it's like, if you want to be the responsible person and make it easy on the people left behind, then you just know all this and you take precautions and you make arrangements. And I don't know, it's almost like if you know this and you ignore it, then you're almost purposefully putting your family into a position where they're going to have to be stressed out. They're going to have to be forced into making decisions that they really have no idea. And then that's what causes fights, because, one person might think, well, they definitely want to be buried. And the other person's like, no, I think they said they wanted to be cremated. But then it's like, well, should we just bury them because maybe they didn't want to be cremated, and you can't uncremate somebody? I mean, it's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like the fights. I mean, I'm sure you've got some good stories about.
No, I have so many stories. But can I say one thing? Sometimes even when you do try to have the conversation, people do not want to talk about it. And I think that's where, with parents and kids, there is something that blocks their brain from thinking that I'm going to have to leave my kids behind, or on the adult kid side of like, oh, I don't want to even fathom thinking of my parents, not being here and living my life without my parents. But even when you do have the conversation, so in last December, there was a special going on with these pre-need arrangements. So I'm like, okay, whoever's death I'm dealing with, I'm buying them a pre-plan. Okay. So I bought myself one, I bought my dad one, and I bought my boyfriend one. And I'm like, I'm not being put out again by anybody. And so I bought, I was the purchaser. So if you do have someone that doesn't want to have the conversation, you can buy a pre-need arrangement as the purchaser, and they are the beneficiary. Okay. So I've had several spouses do that, where they want to save their wife the heartache and the trouble from even going there and talking about what we're going to have to do, how our daughter's going to have to deal with it. And so I had a gentleman, he bought 2 pre-need plans for him and his wife. She doesn't even know, but the daughter knows. If they're traveling to Ireland, it's this phone call, and this company handles everything. Here's the urn kits that we have. This is what you're going to do with it. And so you can create a safe kind of space where someone doesn't have to know. It's just everything will be dealt with. And sometimes that's the best way to bring up a conversation. I've had people get in fights where the daughter's on her deathbed but she doesn't want to die. And the dad's like, well, do you want to do traditional or cremation? And they got in a fight about it because she didn't want to talk about it, even though she was on her way out. So there, for that, I would suggest take responsibility and just make it easy on yourself as a caregiver, as a spouse, as a parent. You are your own advocate. Okay. So put yourself first, because you cannot take care of someone else when all of your energy and everything's depleted. So I went back. So this is a 9-month process. So I said, Dad, I've got this card. You're going to put it behind your wallet. It's an 800 number. Just put it behind your wallet. And then the next conversation was, okay, you're going to get the urn kit in the mail. Okay. So you're going to take out everything and do some pre-planning. And then literally 6 months later, because he never wanted to talk about it. Okay. So he's like, Sherri, he goes, I don't even know if I want to be cremated. And I said, okay. He goes, I have a plot and I want, so, he goes, I don't even care anymore. He goes, I go, well, Dad, do you know what happens when you don't get cremated? He goes, well, I never really thought about it. I go, well, I've got details. I work with someone who has given me about a 45-minute detail of what can happen, because we all don't know when we're going to pass away. Did we fall and hit our face? Are we lying in bed, dying in peace? Where are we? You don't know what everything's going to look like, basically. And he goes, okay, just this is where the plot is, and I don't care. Just do whatever you want. So that's how all that ended. But you just got to keep chipping away and talking about it and getting all the paperwork done, really, so that you can save your family money, long term, right?
Absolutely.
So I had a gentleman yesterday, his wife is getting ready to pass, and I think a local funeral home, he checked for, it was $18,000. Basically he was going with what I could offer him, and he basically saved about $15,000.
Wow.
So that's about the I don't know what percentage that is, but overall you can save about 75% when you choose cremation over traditional burial. But it's up to everyone's choice, right? So really, it's just it's creating a safe space to talk about it and to give pros and cons of both. There's a lot of different cultures that have beliefs where they can't get cremated. So I've been kind of in the nucleus of that, and it's interesting how it all panned out. Because what people don't realize is when you pass away somewhere, you have to transport a body. That can be very expensive. So the family really needs to think about that. I had a couple, they were trying to save money. They spent their whole life being very generous to all family members. Their religion, they were not supposed to cremate, but so they were going to be the first in their in their family and their religion. And they had me FaceTime the daughter in Atlanta, get approval. She was okay with it. They had one more person to check with. So long story short, in Indonesia, where the woman was from, they were not, and because of their religion, they were not going to accept her cremated remains. That means she would be denounced from her family. So they couldn't go with the cremation. So basically her body will have to be delivered to Indonesia. And how expensive will that be? So I think the modern version of dealing with end-of-life affairs really has people thinking about financial cost, ecological values, about what we're leaving behind. And cremation is on the rise across America, 50%, with 75% of Californians getting cremated, and I think 90% of Canadians. So I feel like our kind of conscious mind is evolving into being more simple and affordable and easy on everybody.
Sure. Absolutely.
So that goes back to leaving our legacy, right? So we want to leave a legacy where people, they have processed grieving, healing, and they're whole and healthy, and they're functioning in life, because we all have a lot to deal with. So let's make it easy and care.
Wow, this has been great. I mean, you can't have too many of these conversations, yet most people never have the conversation. So there's always more to learn, and it's not something that you spend a Saturday night saying, let's learn about cremation or burial or make a decision. So it's something that has to just come up by somebody that maybe has heard this podcast or has, witnessed what another family that they're familiar with has gone through, and they just don't want to put their own family through that. So it's a process, but and that's really, legacy therapy. It's the podcast designed to help you not make the same mistakes that other people before you have made. And in this case, it's having to make those very hard decisions and very expensive decisions, and ones that cause a lot of infighting. And so we're hoping that, some of you listeners will actually do something about it. And again, Sherri, give your information, how they can get a hold of you. And you're a really good person to educate, because you do care, and it's like, and you have a lot of experience, and don't, this is the thing, guys, don't talk to somebody who knows nothing about this and get their opinion, because everybody's got one and they pull it out of their whatever. I'm just saying, everybody's got an opinion, and it's like, you know what, get the opinion of somebody that knows something before you just go ask your neighbor and your plumber and your gardener.
Exactly. And I think, get to know their experience. What have they experienced? Are you just hiding behind a title? Right? Do you have a title that represents what you should know? But what is the actual experience? And are you my advocate?
Exactly.
And so, really explore a viewpoint from a 360 viewpoint.
So how is
so many little
sorry, I keep interrupting.
Ways. No, I'm sorry.
How is it that they can engage with you?
Oh, yeah.
Is the best way.
So icare-concierge.com. The educational platform is going to be At the Bell. So that'll be on Facebook. It's At the Bell, and there are open office hours Monday and Wednesday at 1 p.m. So you can log on and find me on Facebook and ask questions and start a conversation there.
That's excellent. Yeah. Oh, I wonder. That's wonderful. I actually didn't even know that. So that's good. Like open office hours for people to come on and ask. Very good.
Somebody gave me that idea.
Yeah. Nice. All righty. Well, all right. Well, I think we're good for today. I know we could talk forever. Sherri's very easy to talk to, by the way. So we could talk, but I got to close it up now. But I just want to thank everyone for listening today. I hope you got some value out of this. Our goal on each episode is for you to get something to take away that's going to make your legacy be a stress-free one. And so, again, check out the website, www.gotittogethernow.com, and you can check out the online course modules and see what's going on there. And so until next time, this is Stacey Golden-Lisnock, your financial advocate, and I'm signing off. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you for listening to the Legacy Therapy Podcast. If we hit it out of the park today and you learned at least one new thing to take action on in your own quest to planning the best legacy possible, then be sure to tell your friends, subscribe, and rate and review wherever you get your podcast. The show notes will provide the sites and information that were discussed today. You can get more great tips, resources, and inspiration by visiting our website, legacytherapypodcast.com.